Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Ben Wood. I'm the founder of RideshareGuru.com. Today we have attorney and co-founder of LegalRideshare, Bryant Greening, joining us to cover some topics, several topics: unemployment for rideshare drivers and some of the issues regarding COVID-19, dash cams, a lot of other topics that are going to affect rideshare and delivery and just general gig economy workers. Today with what's going on with COVID and just other situations that arise in doing rideshare, gig economy work, delivery. Bryant has been practicing law for nearly 10 years, and he's been operating Legal Rideshare, helping rideshare and delivery drivers for 5 years, since 2015. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Bryant, and we'll have some Q&A at the end, but go ahead and type your questions in throughout the webinar. I might offer up the questions in the middle of his presentation. I might save them for the end, depending on the context. So go ahead and add those questions however you feel free doing it. So Bryant, go ahead. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Ben. It's a real pleasure to be here. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with Rideshare Guru. We send clients to Ben's site all the time. It's a great resource of information and articles, everything from dash cams to insurance and help with taxes. And it's a real honor to be working with you guys. As we're here today, we have this cloud above us, COVID-19, and it's really affected everything that everybody's doing around the world, and it's really hit gig workers and rideshare drivers particularly hard. We're in a situation where drivers had to fear for their health at the beginning, and then recently fear for their finances. There are budding programs such as unemployment, such as the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, things that government is putting in place to try to assist drivers, assist independent contractors. But the truth of the matter is the governments, the help pages, everybody's catching up because one, this is a new circumstance for everybody. And two, independent contractors like rideshare drivers are typically not covered by these things. Typically if you lose your job as a rideshare driver, you get deactivated, you're not going to be entitled to unemployment. Here we have a change in circumstance, and we'd like to talk about ways in which you can help protect your finances and help protect your livelihood and your life. When we talk about driving in this new environment, we want to first talk about health. That's really the most important thing. We have been seeing that rideshare companies are requiring masks, requiring that there's a certain limitation to the number of passengers that can ride in a car. They're asking rideshare drivers to keep the windows open when at all possible. These are all great tips, but really it starts with the driver. On my way to the meeting today, I actually ordered an Uber. It was the first time that I'd taken an Uber since the height of the pandemic. And it was a really interesting experience to get into that vehicle. I had a mask on, and I'll tell you that the rideshare driver did not when I first walked in. And that it was jarring. I would encourage every driver to please take your own health seriously and the health of your passengers, because at the end of the day, it affects you, and it's also going to affect your rating. It's, if a driver doesn't appear to be taking the recommendations of the company, and in some cases the requirements of the company seriously, it's only going to harm that driver going into the future. So there are some things that we're recommending. One, wear a mask. It's just not worth it from a health or a public relations standpoint, essentially for yourself, to not take that step to protect yourself. Two, we're recommending that drivers put signs up in their cars with clear rules for passengers to be in that vehicle. Something as simple as, please wear a mask. Please crack your window. Speak up if you notice something that attracts your attention negatively. Like if a passenger sees that somebody's left a tissue in the back of the seat, make sure that they know that they can tell you that you can, you're a listening board to make sure that your vehicle is as clean as it can be and people feel safe inside of it. We're also recommending that drivers take extra precautions in terms of cleaning their vehicles. Everybody wants to have a car that is physically appealing. People, of course, you don't want there to be wrappers everywhere on the floor and, people visibly see that the car's a mess. But there's also in this, this new environment, dirt, uncleanliness, things that you can't see. So take the time to, take a Clorox wipe, buy some Lysol, whatever, you want to use to wipe down the vehicle a few times a day. Nobody's saying that you need to stop after every ride and wipe everything down. That would infringe on your ability to earn money. But you should be taking a break here and there, again, for your own safety and for your passenger's safety, to make sure that the vehicle is in tip-top shape. We don't want to be heroes in this environment. Drivers and passengers both have agendas. Drivers need to make money, passengers have places to go. But if there's a passenger that makes you feel uncomfortable, for instance, somebody won't wear a mask or somebody's trying to pack in a bunch of people into the car in contradiction to the rules set by the rideshare companies, you need to speak up. That's an opportunity for you to cancel the ride politely, give the passenger an opportunity, say, sir, ma'am, I really am needing you to put on the mask, and if not, you're going to have to find another driver. And if they refuse, you're completely within your right to cancel. And if I were you, I would make a note of that to Uber or Lyft at that moment. Just explain what happened. Nobody's going to give you a problem for canceling a ride to protect yourself and to protect the others who might get in your vehicle later. And we're also recommending that if you have the opportunity and you have symptoms, get tested, protect yourself. Make sure that if you're feeling sick, what that means. Have you tested positive for COVID-19? Is it regular influenza? Is it a general cold? Being aware of your status, if at all possible, will only protect you going forward and hopefully keep you on the road or put you back on the road sooner rather than later. I touched briefly on unemployment for drivers and gig workers. Plain and simple, gig workers under the new federal guidelines and law are entitled to unemployment benefits. Now, there's people that think both ways on this issue. Some people are angry at the companies for not having contributed to the funds to begin with. Other people think that it's the government's role to step in these times. Wherever you stand, these benefits are here for you, and you should take advantage of them if you've lost money during this time. Rideshare was obviously down. Delivery of food, delivery of groceries. There were opportunities there during this pandemic, but for those of you who are pure Uber, pure Lyft, might not have had the ability for whatever reason to get on the Instacart platform, whatever it may be, unemployment is a path that you should have already tried to go down, and if not yet, you should strongly consider it. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Act provides benefits to eligible individuals who are self-employed or otherwise don't qualify for unemployment benefits. So what does that mean? Most people, probably 70% or so of workers in the United States have an employer. That means when they get laid off or there's a reason why they can't work, they can go to the unemployment office and they can provide certain documents and information that the unemployment office is used to collecting. So things like your old manager's name, a pay stub showing your prior earnings and average weekly wages. Independent contractors, before this act, did not have that sort of information. They didn't have a pay stub to show the unemployment office. And when people first started applying for benefits from the gig world, the states and local governments had no idea how to handle it. They were totally caught off guard. So now there are procedures in place in most states, and I'm in Chicago, I know in Illinois, that they are now figuring out how to collect this information, how to ask the questions to get the data that they need to provide the driver with the benefits. Drivers are currently eligible for $600 per week, which can, obviously reimburse a lot of the money that you would have been making pre-pandemic. I know a lot of drivers are making $700, $800, $900, $1,000 a week, but $600 is nothing to scoff at, and it can certainly help during these tough times. The Department of Labor, federally, recommends that each driver check with their state Department of Unemployment and Security office so that they can figure out the procedures particular to the state that they're in. While the federal government was the one that affected this law, put it into effect, it's the state governments that are actually responsible for accepting applications and doling out benefits. So don't call the feds, don't call your city, call your state unemployment office, and you should be able to get the information that you need to hit the ground running. Once your employment benefits are approved, you have to file a new claim every week to keep getting the money. So don't stop just after that first application. Make sure that you're keeping everything fresh and you can keep those unemployment checks coming as is necessary. As with anything with government, persistence is key. Do not just fax in your forms and assume that everything's going to work out. You should be calling and checking the status of your claim regularly. They are ready and anticipating these calls. You're not bugging anybody by making sure that you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, and probably more importantly, that the employees over at the state unemployment office have crossed their T's and dotted their I's. In Chicago, there's a contacted IDES, Robin, who's an agent that's specifically dedicated to processing Uber and Lyft claims. So her phone number is 217-221-6229. So if you are in the Chicago or Illinois area, that would be a contact. And I guarantee you that there's a Robin at most of these offices because there are so many gig workers who are dealing with these challenges right now and just trying to, hit the ground running. Again, if you need assistance, your first step is going to be to call the unemployment office in your state. If you are getting the runaround, if you can't figure out how to do the forms correctly or what information needs to be provided, we do recommend that you call an unemployment lawyer in your state because this is going to be specific to your location. It's not something that one attorney is going to know how to do if they're not local to you. Rideshare Guru also has several resources, articles, links on this issue. So we recommend to visit Rideshare Guru for those answers. One of the issues that we dealt with throughout the pandemic was Instacart and delivery. I'll tell you, 3 months ago, Instacart was really not on our radar as a gig app that the majority of workers were on. It was Uber, it was Lyft, it was Grubhub, Postmates. Instacart was certainly a player, but over the past few weeks and few months, they have boomed into one of the big dogs in this gig world. We actually were on the forefront of some of the issues that related to Instacart in delivery and some of the hardships that drivers were facing. Tip baiting was a story that broke about a month and a half ago on CNN, and our office was the first one to bring that to their attention. So I would assume that anybody who has done Instacart would be aware of this issue, but for those of you who haven't, essentially customers can put in a tip before a delivery is made. They can say, I need you to go pick up X, Y, and Z, and I'm putting in a $100 tip. And after that delivery is made, they then have the opportunity to change the tip if it suits them. Now, you think about that, and it actually logistically makes sense. What if something goes wrong? What if the delivery never gets made, or the drivers or shoppers rude, or you could think of a variety of scenarios in which that tip would need to be adjusted. But during this pandemic, we saw customers abusing that system and actually enticing drivers to pick up goods, deliver those goods, and then reducing that tip to nothing or $1. And it's fraud. At the end of the day, it's fraud, because it's an inducement to get a shopper to do something that they wouldn't have otherwise done, and then pulling that away from them. So it's unacceptable, it's illegal, and we were actually one of the first to recognize that and make sure that the drivers were protected. And as we sit here today, we've actually got senators who are working on correcting that issue. Some presidential candidates, Elizabeth Warren is on this issue. So we're really proud of how we were able to advocate in that way. There's also the issue in delivery services, particularly at Instacart again, with bots. We are hearing over and over again that drivers and shoppers are having difficulty actually getting these orders. There are people out there who have created programs that snatch up all of the orders and ship them off to a few drivers who they're in cahoots with. And that's to the detriment of everyone else. Unacceptable, and we are demanding that Instacart take responsibility to ensure fairness in the process. If you're going to bring on hundreds of thousands of people to do this dangerous work in these tough times, you need to make sure that there's fairness and everything is equitable in how those orders are divvied out, and people can therefore make a living doing this work. So if you hear of those issues, please let us know, because again, we're trying to gather information, gather data, talk to drivers, and see if we can get this in the hands of people who can really make a difference, legislators, local, federal, whoever's going to listen and make change. Please keep record of any of these incidents that you face so that we, again, have the information that we need to push it to the right hands. Overall, when we're talking about delivery again, I understand I just kind of went on a tangent and stood on a soapbox about some of the issues that drivers are facing, but we need to come back to what's the most important thing. If you're engaging in this work right now, stay safe. Personal protective equipment, face mask, hand sanitizer, cameras in your vehicle if you've got passengers. Be smart and make sure that you're protecting yourself, because you're running a business right now, and that business needs to be protected. At LegalRideshare, we are a personal injury law firm that's dedicated to Uber and Lyft and other rideshare accident and injury claims. So what does that mean? We help drivers who get hurt on the job. One of our focuses is ensuring that drivers get medical bills paid. We ensure that drivers collect lost wages based on the time that they were unable to be on the road, get compensation for disability, whether temporary or permanent, and obviously the pain and suffering that they endure. So LegalRideshare was created in 2015, right at the start of rideshare in most big cities, and we have grown with the companies. Since then, we have been advocates for the rideshare driver, and we continue to make that our priority. So if you get into an accident, if you are injured on the job, please give us a call at the very beginning so that we can make sure that you are taking the steps that you need to get the adequate compensation and ultimately get back on the road in a quick and healthy manner. Given our place in the rideshare world, we get a lot of questions on how to handle accidents. I'm going to give you a couple tips that apply to Uber, to Lyft, whether you're doing a delivery on Grubhub or Postmates or Instacart. These are going to be the basic steps that you want to take to ensure that the process goes smoothly. The first step is to make a police report. Drivers are so commonly afraid to involve police for a couple of reasons, whether it's they don't want the the app to find out that they had been involved in an accident, or they're scared that it's going to slow down the process, or they just don't think that they need to, there's really no excuse to not call the police after a crash, because you want that report made to document what happened. You want the police to either come to the scene if they're willing, or take a statement in their, at the precinct, if that's where you have to go, to understand who were the parties involved, what are the witnesses' names and phone numbers, what street corner did this happen on, is there potential footage. The police officer's job is to investigate, and that investigation is going to provide evidence to you down the road. So don't think of it as a hassle. Think of it as a necessary step to protecting yourself. Many drivers are also, they recognize, look, I've got a customer in the back seat. There's a passenger back here. I've got somebody's delivery ready to be delivered. So they want to get out of there. They want to be polite, and they might hastily apologize for the accident. We don't recommend that you say anything that would attribute fault to yourself at the scene of the crash. That's really not a determination for the drivers involved. That's a determination for the insurance company and for the lawyers down the road. So if you get out of the car and make a statement, "I'm so sorry that I hit you," that really handcuffs the insurance companies and the drivers down, and the lawyers down the road if they're trying to advocate on your behalf. When it comes to rideshare, one of the most important steps you can take is to get your passengers' information. So once your passengers leave the scene, it's going to be difficult to locate them again. We have mechanisms to do that. We can file lawsuits and issue subpoenas, but Uber and Lyft are not going to just hand that information over. And those people who were sitting in the back of your car at the time of a crash are vital witnesses to what happened, to how the impact felt, to who may have been responsible, to the injury that you may have complained of right after the crash. You want them to be in your corner. Now, most of them have places they have to go. That's why they were in your car to begin with. So offer to, obviously let them out of the vehicle, make sure they're okay. Don't keep them there against their will, but just say, "Hey, before you go, can I get your name and phone number?" And that way, if the insurance company or anybody has a question down the road, at least I can get a hold of you. That's going to save you months of aggravation in terms of getting passenger information from Uber and Lyft, should you need it. Make sure that you exchange information with the other driver. We have several instances in which rideshare drivers were involved in crashes. The other driver gets out of their car, recognizes either damage or lack thereof, gets back in their vehicle and flees. If you can collect the other driver's license plate number, the make and model of their vehicle, maybe get their name during that initial conversation, and if possible, get their insurance information, their phone number. But the more information you can collect from that other driver immediately, the better. Lastly, we want to make sure that if you're injured, you make a statement about that at the beginning. You don't need to be a hero. You don't need to tell everybody, "I'm okay. I'm a little shaken up. I'm okay." If you're feeling a pain, tell the responding police officer that. That doesn't mean that you need to go get surgery tomorrow. You're just making a record of, before the incident, I wasn't feeling pain in my neck or my back or my arm or my leg, and now I am. In line with that, you'll want to ensure that you get medical treatment sooner rather than later, if warranted. I recommend that any driver in a crash gets a checkup. And the reason for that is you don't know how those injuries or pains are going to progress. If you're feeling a little stiff the day of and assume that you're going to get better over the next week and you don't, well, you've missed an opportunity to create a contemporaneous record as to the source of the injury. So what do I mean by that? You get in an accident on Friday night, you wake up on Saturday morning, you're feeling a little pain. Go get a checkup. Tell the doctor that you were involved in this incident, that you are feeling a pain in a particular body part, and that you're wanting to make sure that there's not anything that you should be doing to protect yourself or to minimize the effects of this injury. If 3 days later you feel all better, you went to the doctor one time, no big deal. If 3 days later, you're still feeling pains, it's getting worse, the pains start changing, you've created a record right after the crash as to where those pains started, how they started, and how they progressed. So, again, don't be a hero. Give yourself the opportunity to get checked out, to be healthy, and to create the documentation that you need should you need to prove your case later. This is evidence, and evidence is really only important if you need it. So start creating it just in case you may. In the same regard as accident questions, we also hear about how can I protect myself before an accident occurs. So I just explained what to do after the fact. What can you do to ensure that you're safe in your vehicle, that you again have evidence should an accident take place? The first thing that we always talk about is rideshare insurance. Every driver should have a policy that covers their rideshare work. Yes, it will cost you more money. It will, they range from $30 extra a month to $130 extra a month. Shop around, find a policy that works for you and for your budget, but you want to have it, and you will be sorry if you don't. There are all sorts of reasons why that's true. It starts with deductibles. It also includes having coverage for your vehicle if you cause a crash or if you get in a crash in period one. We could have a whole topic on rideshare insurance, but if you take one thing away from this today, it's call up your insurance agent and ask them what it would cost to add rideshare coverage to your policy, and make sure that they're aware that you drive for Uber or Lyft, because if they're not and you get in an accident, you can very well assume that they're going to deny coverage and probably drop you. The second most important insurance, and I use that term loosely for the next topic, is a dash cam. When you are a rideshare driver, the dash cam is the most important thing in your vehicle. You want to be able to document the people in your vehicle, the conversations in your vehicle, the actions of other drivers on the road, and anything else that may occur when you are on the clock. This ultimately comes down to evidence that can prove your case or prove your innocence. So many drivers think to themselves, we really don't need to spend the money to put a dash cam in my car. What's going to happen? I'll be able to give my version of the facts to the rideshare company. I can explain to the insurance company what happened. Well, a dash cam takes the he said, she said out of the situation. When it's your word versus a passenger's word, or your word versus another driver's word, the insurance companies, the apps, they often don't know who to believe. They throw their hands up in the air, and a lot of times drivers end up on the losing end. A dash cam solves that problem because the camera does not lie. It's an independent third-party witness who's going to show, is that allegation against you true? Were you actually acting like you were intoxicated? Were you slurring your words? Oh, did that driver rear end you, or did you back into that driver? You have a forward-facing and a rear-facing dash cam. That's going to come extremely well in hand for you when the time comes that you need to prove your case or defend yourself. There have been recent articles in publications like The Guardian and many others that talk about sexual assault, batteries, harassment, express kidnappings, things that drivers are accused of, and sometimes things that passengers are accused of victimizing drivers. The dash cam, again, will help you prove which of these events happened and which didn't. And that's only going to go to your benefit. I said it earlier, you are a business owner. You are an independent contractor. This is your livelihood. This is your life. Protect yourself. Protect yourself. And the dash cam is the top way to do that. Rideshare Guru has a list of recommended dash cams. LegalRideshare, just recommends get the one that fits your budget, but make sure it's forward-facing and backward-facing so you're covered from all angles. And I would visit Rideshare Guru for a list of recommendations. I do understand that we have some questions. Ben, I'm going to pass it off to you. If you want to read any questions that we have from the crowd.
Thanks, Bryant. Yeah, there's a couple here. Let me go through. One of them, somebody asked, they submitted a claim to IDES. It's saying payment on hold. They're not hearing back. What options do they have as far as following up and getting a status update other than going in person?
Well, going in person is an option. I would recommend continued calls. A lot of times these hiccups in payment or coverage is specific to the application form. So make sure that the form was completed accurately. If it was, resubmit it. There's no harm in resubmitting your forms and paperwork. So I would definitely recommend to continue calling them until you get the answer that you need. Again, these need to be manually certified. So you need to ensure that people are reviewing the documents that you submit and actually putting that stamp on them. So certainly a little bit of motivation doesn't hurt.
Another person asked, Barbara asked, she said, I signed up for unemployment, which becomes PUA for gig workers and self-employed. When it became PUA, they changed her from self-employed to working for FEMA with $0 in wages. She's not sure if that's correct or why that would be changed.
When we talk about the current unemployment benefits for gig workers, it's $600 is the benefit. So if she was receiving more than that originally, it would be likely that it would be reduced back to the $600. Ultimately, that's what the legislature approved, and unfortunately, there's not a way to get more. Now, if you're not getting the $600, you may want to resubmit your paperwork to show that you would be entitled to the maximum benefit. So say you were making $800 a week, that's going to be sufficient to trigger that maximum unemployment benefit, and you should be at least getting that.
I have a question here about two-party consent. So dash cams that are facing in the vehicle, in my opinion, like you said, a two-directional dash cam, in my opinion, it should be two-directional, but that should include recording inside the vehicle to record passengers. But the question that this person had was, two-party versus one-party consent states, video versus audio. What are the allowances for a driver if their state requires two-party consent, and does that apply both to audio and video?
So that's a great question. And let me start by explaining to the audience what a one-party versus two-party consent state is, just so we're all on the same page. Some states require for recording that only one of the people that's recorded has knowledge and consent to the recording. So if you get into my car and I have a dash cam and I know that the dash cam is on, that's sufficient for me to record anybody who's in the vehicle. That's a one-party consent state. Now, in a two-party consent state, both or all people that are being recorded need to consent to the recording. It's not sufficient for me to have knowledge that my dash cam is on, but I also need to get your consent to be recorded by it as well. In the majority of states, one-party, two-party, it doesn't really matter if you are not recording people in a place where they have let me rephrase that. If they are being recorded in a place where they do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy, all this one-party, two-party consent doesn't really matter. So if you're at home, you have an expectation that what you say and do is not going to be recorded and is not going to be published for other people to see. Now, if you're sitting on a city bus, you don't really have that same expectation. You know that when you talk, people are going to hear you, and somebody may have their cell phone out. I would argue and have argued that an Uber or Lyft car is the exact same as a city bus for that purpose. So you're sitting in the car with a stranger in public. You need to understand that what you say and do is not private. And I don't think you have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But what we do at Legal Rideshare is we actually give stickers, little decals, to drivers to post in their vehicles, whether they're in a one-party consent state or a two-party consent state, that is a warning. It says, smile, you're on camera for your protection and mine. And then every person who gets in that car is on notice that the camera's on, that they're being recorded, and they have an opportunity to opt out of the ride. You know, I tell drivers all the time, if somebody's uncomfortable with your dash cam, don't get into that battle as to who's going to cancel the ride. Be the bigger person. Say, I understand your concern. I understand that this makes you uncomfortable. I will be the one to cancel the ride so that you don't incur any sort of fee, and then move on to the next rider. The vast majority of riders are not going to have a problem with it. And in fact, we hear from people all the time that they're happy that drivers have dash cams because they feel like there's accountability. To hit on the last point of your question about audio and video, I am not aware of most states there being a distinction between the two. Now, there's 50 states. I don't know the recording laws in each one of them. But in the vast majority, one party versus two party with regard to video and audio is treated the same. If you are interested in one of those decals that we talked about to post in your vehicle, email us at help@legalrideshare.com. Send us your mailing address. We'll send one to you for free. We send them to drivers all the time. And I think it helps relieve a lot of those concerns and helps drivers comply with the law wherever they are.
And just a note, if you go to rideshareguru.com and click dash cams at the top, we have a list of which states are two-party and which states are one-party consent. There's another question. Somebody asked, you'd given the number for Robin at IDES. Could you repeat that? I don't think everybody caught it, but there's a lot of people interested.
Yes, so it's Robin at IDES. The number is 217-221-6229. So Robin, again, she is solely dedicated to Uber and Lyft claims. She's helpful, she's knowledgeable. You know, I do think she can help you out if you've been having trouble getting those benefits.
There's a question here. There's actually two questions that are fairly the same, so I'm going to give you the combined version. So IDES, or a few people are claiming that IDES is denying Uber drivers PUA and telling them that they have to reapply for unemployment insurance benefits because they're not independent contractors under the PUA. And that's yeah, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, or I haven't heard anything like that yet, but I've heard other people having difficulty applying.
We have heard drivers having some difficulty, and that's one of the reasons. Most of the time, it's a communication issue or a documentation issue. So these unemployment agents are new to this process as well. I would recommend, if you are having these issues or being told something that you think is incorrect, to contact Robin. Robin is going to be the resource who will know where an Uber driver or Lyft driver needs to go, what forms need to be produced, why they're getting the answers that they're getting. I think each claim, each issue is going to be individual or fact specific to that driver. But the vast majority of claims are handled and resolved with, you know, an additional piece of information or an additional signature, or, you know, understanding or being told how to frame something or phrase something, so that the agent on the other line fully comprehends what you're asking for. And Robin's going to be a great resource to help you, you know, formulate that, you know, that information and plan to get the benefits.
There's a two-part question here. It asks what qualifies as proof of income, but the follow-up to that is also, if you can clarify, with Uber and Lyft, they give you the gross that you've earned and then they take their fees out. So how should somebody apply that to the forms and documentations for the unemployment benefits?
So for Uber and Lyft, the documentation that they give you sometimes doesn't have the exact breakdown. Or let me say this, the information that you submit sometimes doesn't include the exact breakdown of your take home. So what is important for Uber or for an Uber or Lyft driver to show is what they're pocketing at the end of each month or each week, so that the state can determine what your actual gross income is. So, if you have expenses, they need, you need to be able to deduct those. It's adjusted gross income is what you're entitled to collect as a driver under the plan. And again, Robin has all of this information with specific forms and can tell you exactly what you need to present to speed the process forward.
I have a question here about accusations against drivers. Obviously, a dash cam solves some of those problems, but not all. So when a driver is accused of being intoxicated or smelling like alcohol, they'll get deactivated automatically, and Uber or Lyft will say they're going to investigate. But what is somebody's recourse if they get deactivated for such a claim?
Well, unfortunately, legally, there is not great recourse for drivers. So there's not any due process in rideshare. And what I mean by that is, as an independent contractor, you're not entitled to some sort of hearing or opportunity to defend yourself. The rideshare companies can deactivate you based on whatever they deem necessary. If they don't, believe your version of the events, they can deactivate you. If there's numerous reports about your driving, they can deactivate you. So one of the reasons why we recommend dash cams is to try to get ahead of the deactivation. If you can show that the accusation was false, that's going to go a long way. I had a caller not too long ago who was accused of driving under the influence and was temporarily deactivated while the rideshare company investigated the claim. He sent me the footage from his dash cam, and it showed that the passenger in his back seat was trying to eat, sloppy food, a bunch of different fast food items. And he asked, please don't eat in the back of my car. The passenger flipped out. The passenger said, I'm going to eat when I want to eat. The driver again asked politely, said, please don't eat in my car. She started eating again. He pulled over and ended the ride. And the dash cam then shows the passenger looking right straight ahead and saying, I'm going to report you. I'm going to tell Uber that you were drunk. That dash cam footage was submitted to the rideshare company, and it was the passenger that was deactivated, not the driver. So when you know that something like that is going to happen, when you have the inkling that somebody's not acting appropriately or gives you forewarning that they're going to make some sort of accusation, submit footage. Tell Uber, even if it's just writing a note, if you don't have a dash cam yet, submit something, say, hey, this ride that I picked up at 10 o'clock p.m., this is what happened. And at least your version is documented so that you have an opportunity to defend yourself. We do offer letter writing and advocacy for drivers, in which we will submit a letter on a driver's behalf if they've been deactivated. Without evidence, I can tell you that those letters don't go very far. But if you have support for it, sometimes a deactivation can get overturned.
I've heard of drivers getting the notification that they've been deactivated for intoxication pretty much immediately after a ride ends. And obviously, if they get a notification the following day, there's not much they can do. But I've heard of them, if they get the notification right away, requesting a breathalyzer at a police station. Have you had any experience or heard of any drivers succeeding with requesting a police station administer a breathalyzer and provide documentation of that?
We have. Not every police station will do that in terms of giving you a breathalyzer upon request. but we have heard of situations in which drivers have submitted a breathalyzer right after a ride or a deactivation, showing that they were not intoxicated. And in the same vein as the dash cam, Uber or Lyft can choose whether to accept that evidence or decide how much weight to give that evidence. But some evidence is better than none. And when your goal is to try to save your job, to save your livelihood, it's important that you give yourself a fighting chance. And that means collecting any evidence that you can.
We're probably going to wrap up soon. I have just a few more. Do you have, so there's some drivers that have been driving Uber or Lyft for quite a while, and they might have some type of criminal record from 20, 30 years ago. They've been driving for a while, and then suddenly, Uber may redo their background check and choose to deactivate them for that. Is there any recourse for a driver in a situation like that? Or have you had any experience with, perhaps the letters you write, from your law firm, helping drivers fight that?
So it's pretty much the same answer, that if Uber decides that they don't want you to drive for them, and same with Lyft, they can make that determination. So much of this process is to be proactive. Have the dash cam, get the breathalyzer, and when we talk about criminal past, if you've got a past record, many states and many counties have the opportunity to go in and wipe records. They have a process for making sure that your record from 30 years ago doesn't interfere with the job hunt now. Now, they're not going to go get rid of or seal a violent crime usually, but a lot of times we see this with possession of narcotics or nonviolent crimes. If you have something in your history that you think could give you or could give the rideshare company reason to deactivate you, I would contact a local criminal attorney and find out what the steps are in your state for sealing those documents or even getting that record wiped. And hey, Ben, I actually just saw a chat from Lawrence, who's asking, he says, I was injured while making a delivery in California. Who do I contact? The answer is LegalRideshare. We can talk about the facts of your case, how you were injured, who's responsible, and we can talk about avenues of recovery in terms of medical bills, lost wages, pain, and suffering. So, Lawrence, if you're injured on the job in the gig world, give us a call. You can reach us through our website, LegalRideshare.com has all the contact information.
Yeah, I've talked to people that have dealt with LegalRideshare in the past and had good things to say. That's why I decided to work with them. And don't feel like you guys have to find somebody local. The qualifications that Bryant and his partner have, they can probably help you. And if they can't, they'll point you in the right direction. So you should reach out to them first. And at the very least, if it's not something that they deal with, then I'm sure they'll be able to give you, some tips or point you in the right direction. But reach out to them first. Don't just assume that if you're in a different state that it's not something that they can handle. And I do have another question for you. Is somebody that's let's say a driver is on the job, they're driving a passenger and they get in an accident. They're not at fault, or maybe they're not sure if they're at fault, but in either scenario, they can't drive because their vehicle's damaged, or maybe they're injured. Even if it's not an injury, is workers' compensation something that is something that they can pursue? Not just pain and suffering or at fault damage, but just workers' compensation because they're unable to work because their vehicle's damaged.
So if you are unable to drive because of vehicle damage alone, workers' compensation is not going to apply. That would be a claim for the insurance company for the at-fault driver for a loss of use. And that's something that, depending on the circumstances, our office can and does help with. workers' compensation applies to injured people, people who suffer bodily injury on the job. In most states, independent contractors are not entitled to workers' compensation benefits. In states like California, where AB 5 was recently passed, by the letter of the law, those drivers would be entitled to workers' compensation, but we're currently not seeing the gig companies complying with that. And shortly, I think we're going to have a ruling as to whether Uber and Lyft need to provide those benefits. So that'll be interesting. But right now, in most states, workers' compensation is not on the table, and you would need to go through a typical personal injury insurance claim through the at-fault driver's policy.
Okay. Well, I know that your time is limited. I'm looking through here. There is one other question I think we should cover, and then I know that you have to get back to things, and I'm going to go ahead and put your email and website in the chat, because if you guys have more questions, reach out. Reach out to Bryant or his partners. And don't feel like this is your only opportunity if you think of something later. There is a question about delivery drivers. Somebody asked if Instacart drivers have to have an additional insurance policy like an Uber driver.
The short answer is yes. If you are working for one of the gig companies and you are using your vehicle to make money, your standard personal insurance is likely not going to cover that. Anytime that you use your vehicle in furtherance of work, that's going to be a specific exclusion from most personal policies. To make sure that you are fully protected, and fully protected means your vehicle is going to get fixed if you cause a crash. Your vehicle is going to be fixed if another driver flees the scene. Your injury might be compensated if the driver who hits you is not insured. If you want those protections, which every person should, you need to make sure that you've got a policy that includes gig work, and that the companies that you use for insurance are aware of the reason that your vehicle is being used. For inviting us today. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. LegalRideshare.com is the easiest way to find all of our contact information. My email address is Bryant, BRYANT, @LegalRideshare.com. If you have a question, email me. I will be sure to get back to you. Thanks again, Rideshare Guru, and good luck to everybody.
Sorry, I had a problem with my mic a moment ago, but I was just thanking you for your time, and just reminding everybody to reach out to Bryant. I'm sure we'll have to come back around and touch on some of these topics as COVID-19 changes the course of things, and as AB 5 and possible changes in employment status for drivers elsewhere come about. So thanks for your time, and make sure you guys check out Legal Rideshare to not only ask questions about some of these topics or reach out if you need them, but they actually have a lot of new information coming about every week on their blog about different things happening in the rideshare industry. So thanks all of you for coming, and thank you, Bryant.
Thank you.